When a lady decided to provide food for a homeless guy she frequently encountered on her way to work, her gesture of goodwill quickly evolved into a terrifying mystery. After an hour, the man handed her a scrawled note in appreciation for her kindness, which included a chilling message. The message that was thrust into Mary's hands, nevertheless, left her feeling incredibly perplexed. On her way to work over an hour earlier, she had almost forgotten to buy this homeless man some food. But it was obvious that it had still deeply affected him. Mary also hadn't met this man for the first time. But this was the first time she showed him kindness. He had been waiting on that route for at least a few weeks by this point, and she always took the same route to work. She had no clue how frequently others would act in a similar manner. The fact that he had been holding off on giving her this message was also obvious. She had simply left her office complex to make a private phone call and have a cigarette. The homeless man approached her at that point and swiftly placed the letter into her hand. He put the message into her hands, almost as if he didn't want to talk to her or answer any questions she might have had. The homeless man moved away from her at a swift pace before she could stop her phone call and react to this unexpected situation. Mary first merely tucked the note away in her pocket while attempting to get back into the discussion, which was a good thing since she ended up talking to this person for more than 30 minutes. She was so absorbed in the talk that she briefly lost sight of the letter in her pocket. She hurriedly returned indoors after hanging up the line since she had a ton of other stuff to complete. And it wasn't until midday that she gave the message any thought. But not because the memory of it suddenly came to her. Mary hastily pulled her cash from her pocket as she stood in line at the cafeteria to pay for her meal. However, the wallet and the note she had received from the homeless guy accidentally dropped out of her pocket. Fortunately, someone else in line witnessed it. With a smile on her face, the woman approached Mary and wanted to give her the note she had just dropped. Nevertheless, she was unable to control her curiosity, and Mary saw her stealing a glance at the message before handing it back. And the woman's smile swiftly gave place to a worried expression. She looked at the message, evidently taken aback by what she saw. Mary was likewise unable to provide any form of an explanation because she had not even read it herself. She forgot about it. How could she be so stupid? In front of the woman, she extended her hand while feigning a smile. She was, however, obviously uneasy. Mary hoped the woman would just comply when she asked if she may have the note back, much more cautious than when she originally took the note off the floor. She questioned Mary face to face what this message was specifically for and where she had obtained it. Mary explained to the woman that she had obtained it from a homeless guy who was sitting outside the building since she saw no reason to lie about it. The women checked the message again, and now appeared even more perplexed. Mary's response was obviously insufficient to convince her, and she was informed to her face that she was lying. That was not feasible, and she would bring this to the CEO if she did not give her the truth at this time. This comment startled Mary. What was this lady contemplating? What was the CEO of the whole firm connected to a straightforward message she had received from a homeless man? And why did this woman appear so certain that she was lying about receiving a chance note? Mary was going to become really irate with the woman and have a loud conversation in the middle of the cafeteria that would be heard by everyone. The talk was then interrupted by a different corporate employee. Mary had never taken the time to get to know the man and had only seen him briefly. Mary was telling the truth, the man said, turning to the woman who was clutching Mary's note. Mary was telling the truth, the man said, turning to the woman who was clutching Mary's message. The woman holding the letter hesitated for a moment, then shattered it again before tossing it back Mary's way. In this setting, Mary could not help but feel watched, but she was also relieved that someone was present who was willing to attest to her honesty. Before leaving the line, Mary overheard her add, "I guess that this has to be nonsense, then." The last thing she wanted was that. Of course, the whole situation had attracted a lot of unwelcome attention, and Mary felt like the center of attention in this situation. Fortunately, the man who had just saved her was ready to assist once more. He placed a hand on Mary's shoulder and invited her to follow him. In order to be out of earshot of the others dining nearby, he led her to the cafeteria's corner once she was helped out of the queue. Mary was still a little rattled up from her last meeting, but at least now that she had the note back, she could finally figure out what in the world had caused that woman to respond the way she did. But then he revealed something unexpected to her. She also expressed to the man how fortunate she was that he had noticed her as she read the message to him. She and the homeless man were never seen outside. The man, who identified himself as Joffrey, acknowledged. At the time he was working in his office, but he was certain that the woman could not have known that. But as he listened to her narrative, he realized how incredibly familiar it was. A few days prior, after giving the man a few money, he had also given him a letter. And he learned a lot from that message. When the man informed Mary that she wasn't the only one who had a noteworthy meeting with the homeless man, Mary raised an eyebrow. Unavoidably, Mary began to feel a little less unique at this point. But oddly, he became even bigger. She kept ripping the shredded note open. Then Joffrey took her by the hand and gazed intently into her eyes. Then he informed her that she had to be prepared to read what was written there. Because there was no turning around after that, Mary experienced an increase in heart rate every second. Why was she in this situation? She briefly pondered not reading the message and returning it to the homeless man, or Joffrey instead. Then, however, she understood that she had to know the truth since the situation had just gone out of hand. She anxiously read the contents on the note as she unfolded it. With every word she read, her eyes grew larger. This might not be accurate. That was unattainable. Joffrey nodded to her as she gave him a serious look in the eyes. The CEO's name was at the top of the document, and Mary recognized it right away. Clearly, he was the subject of the message. The more she read and comprehended the writing on the page, the more she became aware that he did not want to know this knowledge. The man may easily lose his job and possibly even his freedom if even half of what has been said is accurate. How on earth could he have kept this a secret from the public? Joffrey responded to Mary's inquiry about his thoughts by saying that he agreed with all she had said. Since then, he had searched for the homeless guy every morning, but he had yet to see him. He had not had the greatest image of the CEO for some time, but even he was taken aback when he received the message a few days ago. He has struggled to get the facts out there thus far. He had been looking for further material to support the accusations stated in the article since he did not want to stay still during the time that he was unable to locate the homeless guy. The CEO would have done a great job of hiding his tracks if all of these horrific charges were accurate. The fact that this seemingly random homeless man did in fact possess all of this knowledge made it all the more bizarre. Joffrey understood that he would need to meet with the homeless man once again in order to understand more about the CEO's company. Mary sat down in her chair, attempting to concentrate on her computer screen despite her buzzing thoughts about the CEO's secrets. Joffrey pretended to be immersed in his paperwork across the room. However, their sporadic glances were anything but casual, showing a tacit agreement to keep a low profile until they could talk in private. Joffrey deftly tucked a little folded letter beneath Mary's keyboard as the timer for lunch approached. She carefully opened it and read the scrawled words, which recommended a peaceful cafe just outside of town for an after-work rendezvous. The place was ideal, far enough away from the firm to escape inquisitive eyes, yet close enough to gather quickly if necessary. Mary was sipping tea as she sought to make connections. How did a homeless guy obtain such damaging details on their prominent CEO? She thought back to all the times she'd seen him close to the office, constantly watching and taking everything in without ever approaching. His extensive understanding of the CEO's activities suddenly seemed more intentional than fortuitous. Later that day, Joffrey told Mary in private about certain peculiarities he'd observed in the CEO. He frequently takes secretive calls in a foreign language, and once I spotted an unfamiliar insignia on a document he quickly hid, Joffrey confided. These idiosyncrasies only heightened Mary's curiosity and strengthened their determination to learn the truth. Mary and Joffrey set out on their quest to discover the homeless guy in the cold nighttime air. To look for him, they went back to the places where he frequently sat or loitered. Every corner turned, and alleyway examined that night increased their concern about the man's location, making the city's customary noise appear louder. As Mary and Joffrey made their way through the city's labyrinth of streets and passageways, their early resolve gave way to increasing uneasiness. The homeless man, who was constantly in view, appeared to have disappeared at this moment. They started to wonder if they had already lost him, or if he had deliberately avoided them after noticing their frantic search. As the hours passed and exhaustion set in, they were abruptly drawn to a gentle rustle. A wrinkled hand invited them into the dimly lighted alleyway from where it was standing. As they carefully drew closer, Mary's heart constricted with anxiety. But when she saw the person they were looking for, she immediately felt comfort. Since he was aware that their secret mission was becoming more dangerous by the day, he had been waiting for the ideal opportunity to reunite. The homeless guy told tales of their recent activities, revealing occurrences they believed went unreported, saying, "I've been watching you both closely, ensuring my safety and yours." The homeless guy inhaled deeply, feeling the eerie quiet of the alley. Mary and Joffrey exchanged shocked looks as they attempted to absorb the significance of his comments. Was it conceivable that this individual had a connection to the person they were looking into? "The CEO isn't just a stranger to me. There's a bond of blood between us," he said. Mary and Joffrey discussed the night's events at a remote coffee shop. Joffrey said loudly, "Can we believe him? Is he making up stories to control us?" Mary admitted that the CEO's link provided a complicated element as she sipped her coffee carefully. They had to proceed cautiously because figuring out the truth would depend on their following moves. A dimly lit diner, Mary contemplated with her fingers drumming on the table. Joffrey concurred, adding that uncovering the truth would not only validate their suspicions, but potentially revolutionize the power dynamics within their company. Each forward stride was laden with danger, yet the allure of justice was intoxicating. "The perils are evident," she began, "but if the homeless man's words carry weight, the ramifications could be profound." Meticulous blueprint of the office stretched out in front of them. Their gaze followed the paths of corridors and elevators, focusing particularly on the CEO's suite. Carefully mapping their course, their goal was to navigate swiftly and discreetly. Joffrey stressed the urgency of their mission. A brief window of opportunity lay ahead. Their objective? To uncover any files or documents that could illuminate the CEO's dealings, resolute in their determination to unravel the enigma. Joffrey's gaze shifted, his eyes distant as a memory resurfaced. In that seemingly small moment, a flicker of insignificance then, now held incredible potential. If the CEO possessed secrets, there was a high likelihood they were concealed within that very drawer. During one of my report deliveries, I noticed the CEO hastily locking a drawer, thinking I wasn't watching, he confided. Joffrey provided a list of potential conversation starters, a new business proposal, insights on market trends, or even a casual chat about upcoming holidays. We must fully capture his attention, Mary emphasized. Given the CEO's sharpness, our diversion must be both convincing and time-consuming, preventing him from returning to his office prematurely. Stepping into the CEO's opulent office felt like entering a dream. With her heart pounding, she embarked on a meticulous search, starting with the desk and the drawer that Joffrey had mentioned. Time appeared to stand still, yet rush by, as she held on to hope in her quest to discover what they were seeking. As the CEO engaged in a spirited debate with Joffrey, Mary saw her opportunity and seized it. Greeted by the warm touch of the wooden drawer handle, but her excitement quickly faded when she discovered it was secured with a digital number lock. Of course, it couldn't be that simple, she whispered under her breath. As she tried to pull it open, it became apparent that the CEO's hidden secrets were safeguarded behind this formidable barrier. Determination fueled her mind as she raced to devise a way to unlock it. Each second slipped away. Panic started to creep into Mary's being. She was acutely aware of the narrow time frame before the CEO's potential return. Scrambling through her memories, she racked her brain for any recollection of important numbers or dates she might have overheard. Tension hung heavy in the air, leaving Mary torn between the instinct to flee and the determination to endure. "Have you happened to come across Mary?" the CEO queried, his eyes briefly glancing towards the entrance of his office. Joffrey chuckled. "She's probably engrossed in yet another pressing deadline." The weight of responsibility bore down on him, ensuring that the CEO remained blissfully unaware of his hidden sanctuary, if only for a while longer. The neighboring room, Joffrey adeptly directed the conversation, skillfully navigating the CEO's penetrating gaze and probing inquiries that posed a threat to exposing the charade. Antically, Mary's gaze darted around the office, searching for clues. Could these hold the key? As her gaze roamed the room, she discovered a note revealing the CEO's child's age and a retirement countdown clock. Each potential hint painted a vivid picture, weaving together a tapestry of possibilities. Gradually, Mary discerned a pattern emerging, kindling hope that it might lead her to the elusive combination she sought. Her eyes landed on a calendar with a circled date, a photo frame inscribed with mysterious numbers. With a deep breath, Mary entered a sequence of numbers, drawing inspiration from the clues surrounding her. Holding her breath, she anxiously awaited the revelation. Suddenly, a soft click resonated through the silence. The drawer glided open, unveiling a stack of documents, their titles alluding to sinister company secrets. With trembling hands, Mary seized hold of them, feeling the weight of their revelations sink in. Mary gracefully maneuvered through the labyrinth of office cubicles. Her heart thudded in her chest. Abruptly, a colleague turned the corner, narrowly avoiding a collision. With lightning-fast reflexes, Mary pretended to fumble some papers, muttering about an urgent report she needed to submit. Oblivious, her colleague offered a sympathetic smile and carried on. Inhaling deeply, Mary realized she had narrowly evaded detection. A cozy coffee shop, bathed in a soft glow, offered an ideal refuge. Joffrey had arrived earlier, anxiously savoring his drink, when Mary finally entered. Their gazes intertwined, a medley of relief and apprehension reflected in their eyes. Without uttering a word, Mary gracefully passed the documents across the table towards him. In that brief silence, they both grasped the weightiness of the imminent journey they were about to embark upon. They lay sheets adorned with intricate codes, unfamiliar scripts, and enigmatic symbols. Mary, her brows knitted in concentration, endeavored to unravel a paragraph. "We must grasp the significance behind all of this," she mused. It was evident that they had merely skimmed the surface of a convoluted tapestry of deception. Some pages bore the marks of time, while others remained pristine. "This exceeds our wildest expectations," Joffrey whispered. "I've seen these before," he breathed, his voice filled with unease. "It's not just the CEO. My department, maybe even others, are entangled in this web." As the weight of the implication settled upon them, Mary and Joffrey realized that the stakes were far more perilous and treacherous than they could have ever imagined. Joffrey's eyes grew wide with recognition as he deciphered the familiar notations and symbols from his department's secretive messages. One document stood out among the forest of data. Mary wondered out loud, "Are these bribes? Blackmail? Investments?" They realized they were in deep as they put the pieces together, and realized how big of a financial conspiracy this was. A list of names with astonishing quantities of money next to each one. While some names were strange, others were startlingly familiar. But it's not enough to just hint at illegal activity. They require indisputable proof. "We need to connect these transactions to an established illegal undertaking," Joffrey stated, his brow pinched in focus. Both knew that before they could confront or expose someone, they had to create a solid case. Between the disorganized paperwork and unclear transactions, Mary and Joffrey noticed glaring patterns of misconduct. The elderly man glanced at the documents and gave sporadic nods. He pointed to a certain document and said, "I've seen some of them before." With a sigh of relief, Mary said, "Can you help us understand their significance?" The homeless guy leaned back and started to tell a story about the pieces they had discovered. The two met up with the destitute man again in a private area and shared their findings. The three of them laboriously decoded the papers for hours upon hours into the night. These were well thought out, dubious financial transactions rather than haphazard ones. The homeless man whispered in the midst of the intense darkness, "These are the routes they use, the ways they launder the money." A clearer picture started to form with the help of the homeless man's insight and their combined analytical skills. Just before they parted ways, the homeless man looked around anxiously. "Do you believe they're watching you?" Joffrey said, his face worried. The man nodded. The weight of their finding and the accompanying threat suddenly rested heavy upon them. "And probably you two as well, now." His uneasiness was evident in his eyes as he whispered, "I've felt eyes on me ever since I started digging into this." They would have to carry on with their inquiry, but in the shadows. With her eyes darting all over their surroundings, Mary muttered, "We have to be more discreet, more careful." They decided to meet in places where they would fit in, use burner phones, and communicate in code. Their actions took on even more urgency when they realized they could be being watched. One co-worker admitted, "I always felt something was off," and gave Joffrey a USB. Some of their less talkative colleagues discreetly reached out with resources, information, and offers of assistance. Their little group of two quickly grew, and their circle of trust widened as each new ally strengthened their position. Unexpected support was provided by whispered conversations in the break room, which surprised Mary and Joffrey. Equipped with newfound viewpoints and understanding, the team dug into the complex network of dealings and operations within the organization. Dates were marked, flow charts stretched across walls, and dubious transactions were highlighted. A timeline of the CEO's activities started to take shape, and it provided a clear, if disjointed image of years of manipulation. Growing evidence required legal knowledge. A lawyer with a reputation for unwavering integrity, Serena, was contacted. She listened closely in a dimly lit cafe over quiet conversation. Flipping through the materials, she noted, "It's substantial, but circumstantial." Their route was now more obvious, but the journey ahead was still filled with obstacles. "You need a smoking gun, something irrefutable." A shroud of frustration descended across the group. "It resembles a puzzle, where the most crucial piece is absent," Mary thought, her eyelids heavy with fatigue. But they had progressed too far to give up now. Divide and conquer, they decided, each chasing the last piece. The proof spread out in front of them, but the one piece that would actually prove the CEO's guilt or innocence eluded them. He began, "Years ago, we were partners, friends even," with a look of nostalgia in his eyes. It became evident from his story that ambition, selfishness, and betrayal had ripped their relationship apart. The destitute man's downfall was the price paid for the CEO's treachery-fueled ascent. The atmosphere intensified one evening as the homeless man hesitated and then started talking about his past. The homeless man said, "The two of us, we were like brothers," in a voice heaving with passion. But their relationship became more strained as success drew near. He looked away and said, "We trusted blindly, shared secrets, and celebrated milestones. However, as the stakes rose, their togetherness broke down, forcing them to make decisions that would permanently alter their own fortunes. As roommates in college and aspirational young professionals, they created aspirations together. The CEO's ambition knew no bounds as the corporate ladder unfolded. He mediated transactions covertly, sacrificing morality in the sake of authority. The homeless man mumbled, "He was always the more ambitious one," remembering secret gatherings and whispered discussions. The CEO left a path of casualties in his wake, sacrificing moral principles for boardroom supremacy with each rung ascended, losing a piece of his soul in the process. Mary's eyes widened in recognition amidst the evidence and paperwork. She pulled out a faded, meaningless paper and saw an odd seal on it. The symbolism was strong even though the content seemed harmless. This proved to be the unbreakable connection between the CEO's murky network and his clandestine actions. "There was that one document, months ago," she said, as she swiftly looked over the information they had gathered. But the CEO stayed remarkably composed. "You think you have it all figured out?" he asked, clearly displaying his conceit. Accusations and denials were flying, and the tension was high. However, the extent of the CEO's betrayal to the homeless guy went unsaid during their passionate confrontation, a silent shadow between them. With their conviction burning in their eyes, the group stormed into the CEO's lavish office and demanded answers. The two men met eyes, continents apart, but connected by blood. The void between them was filled with silent apologies, hurt, and betrayal. Now, the mission of the organization had a deeper significance. It was a very personal search for atonement as much as a battle against corruption. Stunned stillness fell over the room as the homeless man's voice broke, driven to the brink. "You destroyed everything I held dear, brother." He began to describe what he had done, spilling terrible truths out of his mouth. His first betrayal of his brother was only the beginning of his downward spiral into depravity. It got easier to defend his decisions as he accumulated greater power. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice trembling as he glanced at his brother with sadness in his eyes. The CEO's world was falling apart, and it looked like it took him decades to mature. Headlines exploded with details of the corporate crisis, and social media was ablaze with tales of the CEO's heinous actions. The retaliation was swift and violent. Outside the company's offices, demonstrators gathered to call for justice and openness. The world witnessed the disintegration of a once-respected CEO's facade, revealing a deeper-than-imagined network of dishonesty. Public interest in the CEO case surged as it quickly proceeded to trial. Every development was the subject of a national platform analysis in the unrelenting media frenzy. As charges surfaced, the CEO's strong defense team fiercely retaliated, seeking to undermine the overwhelming body of evidence against him. As Mary, Geoffrey, and the homeless man entered the courtroom with a stronger resolve than before, cameras flashed. A buzz of expectation filled the courtroom as witness after witness testified against the CEO. The CEO felt the weight of the truth weighing down on him, with every testimony serving as a nail in the proverbial coffin. Together, the three of them sat and watched as their unwavering quest for justice began to pay off. Victims of his schemes, rivals, and former workers all came forward with stories that painted an ugly picture of him. The courtroom held its breath as they turned to face one another. In front of a captive audience, their common past was on exhibit, highlighting the divide that deception and ambition had created between them. The room was filled with tears, confessions, and accusations as the jury, who was sympathetic, witnessed the awful family story play. The CEO and his brother's opposition to one another during the court case was the most tragic development. Mary and Geoffrey stayed firm and never left the homeless man's side during the turbulent trial. Their unshakable dedication proved that the strongest ties are those forged in the face of adversity, shining brightly in the midst of uncertainty. Their mutual silent strength was evident, and spoke more than words could ever hope to. As an impenetrable trio against the waves of uncertainty, they entered the courtroom every day. As the trial's last day approached, the courtroom was crowded. Following hours of discussion, the jury returned a unanimous guilty judgment on all counts. The chamber was filled with emotion as the gavel fell. There were many weeping, some in relief, some in despair, but justice had been done. The CEO's network of lies was exposed, and his activities ultimately brought about his own demise. He signed up for treatment programs, put in a lot of effort to patch things up with his estranged family, and even started volunteer work. His tale of fall from grace and difficult return became an inspirational story that offered hope to those who were hopeless. With the unflinching support of Mary, Geoffrey, and numerous others, the homeless guy emerged from the shadows of his turbulent history and started on his journey towards redemption. After everything had settled, Mary and Geoffrey would often talk back on their amazing adventure. They had witnessed everything, from random meetings to elaborate plots. They learned from the events the importance of true kindness and the worth of steadfast trust, especially in the face of hardship. Their experiences served as a reminder that while seeking the truth was admirable, what really counted were the relationships made along the road.